On the day I got married and received the marriage certificate, my mother suddenly died in a car accident. I always thought it was an accident. Later I found out that it was my father's stepdaughter who kidnapped my mother in order to prevent me from getting married. After she found out that my mother had escaped, she pushed my mother onto the road during the struggle, which led to the car accident. I wanted to take her to turn herself in, but my father, afraid that her whole life would be ruined, pleaded with me not to do so. My boyfriend, because he had a child with her, also advised me to let the matter rest. Even my savior was a man who had been infatuated with hers and favored children. In order to protect her, he drove me into the sea, and the car was destroyed and we both died. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I received the marriage certificate. After waking up, I gasped for air. I tried to get rid of the suffocating feeling of being at the bottom of the sea. My mother's nervous voice came. "Serena, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" I looked up and saw my mother. Tears instantly blurred my vision. I hugged her excitedly. After feeling the warmth from her body, I realized that this wasn't a dream. I wasn't dead. My mother wasn't dead either. "Serena, why are you crying? What happened?" I released my mother and quickly wiped away my tears. "It's okay. I just had a nightmare." My mother let out a sigh of relief and gently stroked the top of my head. She smiled and comforted me, saying, "Silly child. It's just a nightmare. Don't take it seriously." I reluctantly pulled the corners of my lips and remained silent. That wasn't a nightmare. It was all something I had really experienced. "Today is your birthday. I've made noodles for you. If you don't eat them soon, they'll get cold." I looked at my mother in surprise. "Today is my birthday?" My mother smiled and said, "You child. You even forgot your own birthday?" It wasn't that I forgot my birthday. It was because on my birthday in my previous life, a major event happened. In my previous life, my boyfriend Aiden chose my birthday to get a marriage certificate with me. But on the day we got the marriage certificate, my mother had a car accident. I suddenly realized. It turned out that I had been reborn and returned to the day my mother died. I was the same as Aiden. We were both single-parent children who depended on our mothers. From helping each other at the beginning to developing feelings for each other later. We got together very quickly. But Aiden's mother thought that my family background wasn't good and that I couldn't help Aiden in his career. So she didn't want me to date Aiden. So Aiden suggested getting the marriage certificate without telling his mother. And his mother wouldn't be able to object anymore. But when we were queuing up at the Civil Affairs Bureau, I received the news of my mother's death in a car accident. When I was in great grief, my biological father found me. Before, my mother told me that after my father went out to work, there was no news of him. My mother and I came all the way to this city. But there was still no news of my father. So we simply settled here and opened a noodle shop. So I never thought that I would have a day to meet my father. My father comforted me, saying that he would take good care of me instead of my mother, and also arranged for me to join his company. But a year later, his stepdaughter Kina came back with Aiden's son. It turned out that before, Aiden got drunk during a team building event and had a relationship with Kina. That's why he was eager to marry me to cover up this matter. I broke down on the spot, and because of Kina and the child, I had one argument after another with Aiden. Later, I accidentally learned that Kina had kidnapped my mother in an attempt to prevent me from marrying Aiden. My mother tried every means to escape, but was discovered by Kina. During the struggle between the two of them, my mother was pushed onto the road by Kina and had a car accident. I wanted to take Kina to turn herself in, but my father stopped me. "Serena, we can't let Kina turn herself in. This will ruin her whole life." Even Aiden tried to persuade me. "Serena, even if you take Kina to turn herself in, your aunt won't come back. What's more, she is the mother of my child and can't become a murderer." I finally came to my senses. My father had always been partial to Kina. Aiden had already changed his heart. Only my savior Leo still supported me and said he would take me to the police station. However, on the way there, he confessed that he and Kina had been childhood sweethearts and he had always been in love with her. In order to protect the person he loved, Leo drove off a cliff and we both fell into the sea together. And the car was destroyed and we both died. And Kina finally got what she wanted. Married Aiden. And had a happy and fulfilling family. I clenched my fists tightly. Filled with resentment. In this new life, I won't let go of those who hurt me and my mother again. While eating the noodles, I integrated the information from my previous life. In my previous life, Kina tried to prevent us from getting married. She deliberately called my mother and lied to her, saying that I had been in a car accident. In a hurry, my mother got into the taxi arranged by Kina at the door of the noodle shop, and she was knocked out and kidnapped. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was morning now, and Aiden had asked me to get the marriage certificate in the afternoon. I still had time to prevent all of this. After finishing the noodles, I packed my things and prepared to go to the noodle shop with my mother. Didn't you say you were going out with Aiden in the afternoon? It's still early. I'll go to the noodle shop to help you first. I lied to my mother. In this new life, I will stay by my mother's side and won't go out to get the marriage certificate with Aiden. But I can't tell Aiden yet. In case he reveals it to Kina, it won't be good. After all, only if Kina thinks that we will go to get the marriage certificate will she carry out her kidnapping plan. In the afternoon, that call finally came. I took my mother's phone first and said I would answer the call for her. And I had already set up the call recording on her phone, just waiting for the call to come. After answering the phone, a man's voice came from the other end. Hello. Is this Ms. Eileen? Your daughter Serena has been in a car accident and is currently being rescued in the Municipal People's Hospital. Please come quickly. The urgent tone was quite convincing. Anyone who heard it would be confused. But I didn't speak. Instead, I turned on the video recording on my phone and pointed it at my mother's phone screen. The man repeated it several times, but I remained silent until the man hung up the phone impatiently. I immediately ended the video recording and called the police directly. The reason was that I had received a fraudulent call. Soon someone came to the door, and I gave them all the recordings and videos I had. The police officers said they would investigate first and contact me when there was a result. After seeing them off, I noticed that Aiden had called me dozens of times. I almost forgot that I still had to deal with Aiden. I called him back, and Aiden answered the phone quickly. Serena, where are you? Why haven't you come yet? I seemed calm, but there was a hint of a sob in my voice. Aiden, I'm sorry. I can't get the marriage certificate with you. Why? Serena, didn't we agree? Why are you going back on your word? There was nothing but anxiety and confusion in Aiden's voice. But I still looked indifferent. The sob in my voice deepened a bit. Aiden, I've thought about it. If we get the marriage certificate without telling your aunt, she will definitely be very sad when she finds out. She is your mother. I don't want to make her sad, nor do I want to put you in a difficult situation. Anyway, we will get married sooner or later. There's no need to rush it. Don't you think so? There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. I seemed to hear Aiden sigh helplessly. But when he spoke again, his voice was gentle. Serena, thank you for thinking of me. What silly things are you saying? Although we haven't got the marriage certificate yet, I've already recognized you as my husband. Of course, I have to think of you. I couldn't help but take the phone away and etched. I overacted a bit and almost felt nauseous. Fortunately, having fulfilled my desire, Aiden didn't continue to pester me and hung up the phone. I didn't contact him either. 2 days later, I received a call. It turned out that the person who made the fraudulent call had been found and they informed me to go over. When I arrived, there was a man and a woman sitting in the mediation room. It was Kina and the man who made the call, Felix. I stood at the door and stared at Kina. A wave of hatred welled up in my heart. According to the timeline of my previous life at this point, I had only met Kina once. It was when I went to the company to find Aiden. I happened to see them walking out together. Aiden even introduced me to Kina as his girlfriend. At that time, I never expected that the woman in front of me would kill my mother in the future. I brought my thoughts back. I walked in under Kina's familiar malicious gaze. I pretended that I didn't remember having met her before. During the mediation, Felix admitted that he made the call. But he claimed that Kina instructed him to do it. As I expected. Felix couldn't take all the blame by himself. He would definitely drag Kina into this. But Kina flatly denied it. I tried my best to control the anger in my heart and remained rational. I just want to know why you made that kind of call to my mother? I pointed out the key point sharply. The police officer also turned his head to look at Kina and Felix. It seemed that he was waiting for their answer. Kina and Felix looked at each other. I guessed that they definitely didn't expect me to call the police. When Felix said that Kina was the mastermind behind it, they were already in the mediation room. The two of them definitely couldn't get their story straight. But they didn't dare to say that their purpose was to kidnap my mother. They were just as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Looking flustered. However, Kina still reacted quickly. But she seemed guilty and shouted hysterically at us. How should I know? I didn't make the call. Ask the person who did. This person has admitted that he made the call. Instead of interrogating him, you called me here because of his baseless claim and questioned me as if I were a criminal. Why? Kina was starting to shift the blame onto Felix. It seemed that a good show of infighting was about to begin. Felix slapped the table hard. His eyes wide with anger. Kina. It was you who asked me to make the call. You also asked me to. Just as Felix was about to reveal the plan to kidnap my mother. The sound of the door opening interrupted Felix. I wasn't surprised to see Vincent and Wendy here. As Kina's parents. How could they not come when their beloved daughter was in trouble? According to the timeline of my previous life, Vincent and Wendy already knew my identity at this time. But Vincent had only come to the noodle shop to see me a few times and hadn't recognized me yet. So now I had to pretend that I didn't know Kina was their daughter and act surprised at their appearance. They were just as shocked when they saw me. Obviously, they didn't expect me to be here. Dad. Mom. Kina stood up, ran quickly to the door, and hugged Wendy, sobbing pitifully. Wendy stroked Kina's head. It makes me feel pity. Kina. What's going on? Why were you brought here? When Kina saw the people who would back her up, she immediately started complaining and pointed at me angrily. It's all her fault. She found someone to accuse me of defrauding her. Seeing that Kina was about to turn the tables, I immediately interrupted her and preemptively said to Vincent, Vincent, someone called my mother on purpose and lied to her, saying that I had been in a car accident. I happened to answer the call from my mother. So they didn't succeed. Now it's been found out that this gentleman made the call, and he revealed that the mastermind behind it is Kina. I don't know that this matter would involve Kina, but I also want to know why this gentleman said that Kina is the mastermind. Kina stared at Vincent with wide eyes. Dad, do you know her? Vincent didn't answer Kina's question. Instead, he walked up to me and asked me cautiously, can we go out and talk alone? I was waiting for him to say that. When we came to the corner of the corridor, Vincent hesitated and took a long time to speak. Serena. Actually, you are my daughter. Everything seemed to go back to my previous life. Vincent said in front of my mother's coffin that I was his daughter. The difference was that in this life, my mother was still alive. I pretended to be shocked and covered my mouth, standing there in a daze. After I left that year, I planned to wait until I settled down and then bring your mother out. But I never expected that when I went back to look for your mother, I heard that she had also left. I thought that your mother didn't want to wait for me anymore. Until I met your mother by chance in a noodle shop last month. I realized that she had come out to look for me that year and gave birth to you. During this past month, I often went to the noodle shop because I also wanted to see you more often. I hope that after you know I'm your father, you won't reject me so much. Liar. In my previous life, I was deceived by Vincent's look of guilt. In fact, Vincent had long known the whereabouts of my mother and me. If I didn't have any value of being used, he wouldn't have come to recognize me at all. But it's not the time to expose him yet. If he wants to act, I'll accompany him. I pinched my own thigh. The pain made tears stream down my face. When I was a child and went to school, everyone always laughed at me for not having a father. I so hoped that one day my father would suddenly appear and tell me that I actually had a father. I didn't expect that this wish has now come true. Seeing this, Vincent patted my shoulder with a look of pity. Child, you've suffered. But this look of pity disappeared in an instant. He changed the subject and said, "Serena, you are my daughter. And Kina is also my daughter. I've always hoped that after I recognized you, you two sisters could get along harmoniously. I think there might be some misunderstanding about the phone call. Would you be willing to give your father some time to figure it out?" I lowered my head, and a trace of contempt flashed in my eyes. Sure enough, just like in my previous life, Vincent always took Kina's side. However, I didn't really expect to be able to prove Kina's crime of kidnapping. After all, I don't have any solid evidence in my hands. But I can pretend to be magnanimous and make Vincent think that I'm an obedient and well-behaved daughter. Okay. I also hope that this matter is just a misunderstanding, so that Dad won't be caught in the middle and be in a dilemma. Vincent seemed very satisfied with my answer and had a look of relief on his face. Kina was taken home by Vincent and Wendy. And I was waiting for Vincent's news. Vincent acted very quickly. In less than 2 days, he came to the noodle shop to find me. "Serena, I found out the truth. Felix had a conflict with Kina before and held a grudge against her. So he came up with this method to harm Kina. Regarding the phone call, Kina really didn't know about it." I held back the urge to roll my eyes. It's really hard to believe such full of holes words. But Vincent actually said them. Who would take the risk of getting themselves into trouble as a form of revenge, while the person being retaliated against remains unharmed? But I still have to cooperate with Vincent in this act. I pretended to heave a sigh of relief. "So that's what happened. I misunderstood her then. Dad, I'll apologize to her." Vincent shook his head. He comforted me understandably. "This isn't your fault. After all, it's Kina who offended someone herself and almost got you all into trouble together. How about this? Serena, I know you majored in architecture in university. And my company happens to be in the real estate business. As compensation, I'd like to invite you to work in the company. What do you think?" Vincent's company is also a well-known real estate enterprise. Many college students are eager to get in after graduation. Logically speaking, I should be very excited that Vincent is offering me a job in the company as compensation. That is, on the premise that I didn't know Vincent was using me. After my mother passed away in my previous life, Vincent also invited me to work in the company. At that time, I naively thought that he wanted to compensate me and take care of me. Later, I found out that what he valued was my identity as the apprentice of the famous architect Winston. He even used my identity and relied on Winston's reputation to secure several big deals. His kindness to me was just for the sake of profit, but I still agreed. In my previous life, Vincent abandoned my mother and me. And he always indulged Kina. Even after Wendy knew that Kina had caused my mother's death, she tried every means to cover it up for her. It was precisely because of these two powerful backers that Kina dared to hurt me unscrupulously. So in this life, I won't let Vincent and Wendy off. After joining the company, I didn't see Kina in the company. In this life, I joined the company at about the same time as in my previous life. It seems that just like in my previous life, Kina has already run away from home to have a baby. That's okay. I'm waiting for Kina to come back with the baby and cause chaos for Aiden. I can also have an extra year to perform well in front of Vincent, gain his trust, get involved in more company business, and find a way to bring him down. But I climbed up too quickly, and Aiden was a bit resentful. After all, he joined the company a year earlier than me. Now he's on the same level as me, and I'm even about to surpass him soon. In addition, every time Aiden mentions getting married, I fob him off by saying that I'm too busy with work. Aiden is becoming more and more dissatisfied with me. So besides working, I also have to coax Aiden and show that I love him. Until Kina came to find Aiden with the baby in her arms. I ran away crying just like in my previous life. Aiden chased after me and waited downstairs at my house. In my previous life, I forgave Aiden and believed that he would handle the situation with Kina and the baby well. But what I got in return was that Kina used the baby's illness to call Aiden away again and again. I couldn't stand it anymore and had an argument with Aiden, forbidding him to see Kina again. But Aiden said that he was just going to see the baby and felt sorry for the child. He even blamed me for being heartless and having no compassion for the baby at all. Aiden's mother also forced us to break up. At that time, after Vincent recognized me, he was afraid that I would be criticized by others. So he asked me to hide our father-daughter relationship first. So Kina was the only legitimate daughter of Vincent on the surface. Aiden's mother wanted Aiden to marry Kina and become Vincent's son-in-law. So Aiden's mother asked me on the phone every day, forcing me to leave Aiden. Aiden couldn't do anything about his mother either. I was exhausted both physically and mentally. But in this life, the one who should be exhausted isn't me. I looked at Aiden pacing back and forth downstairs. The good show is about to begin. I still forgave Aiden. But not like in my previous life when I was so infatuated. I did it to force Kina to take action. Sure enough, after Kina knew that we didn't break up, the first thing she did was to cry to Aiden's mother. With the lessons from my previous life, when Aiden's mother called me, I didn't answer any of them. Soon she came to my house to find me and forced me to break up with Aiden. Serena, considering your family background, in which aspect can you compare with Kina? Your mother gave birth to you with some unknown man. As a bastard, you are not worthy of Aiden at all. If you know what's good for you, leave on your own. Don't force me to do something. But after I heard this, I wasn't angry at all. Instead, I laughed while clutching my stomach. Aiden's mother was confused. Serena, what are you laughing at? I straightened up with difficulty. I sneered. Are you stupid? Aiden's mother's face changed greatly. And she stared at me in surprise. Your son has a bastard child. And I think he's not worthy of me. And I didn't do anything. Yet he came to me on his own and begged me to get back together. Tell me, who is more despicable? No mother can stand her child being called despicable. What's more, someone like Aiden's mother who centers her life around her son. She became furious and slapped me. She grabbed my hair fiercely. You bitch! How dare you call my son that? I'll teach you a lesson. I didn't fight back. Because I had already heard the sound of the password being entered at the door. When Aiden came in, what he saw was the pitiful sight of me being bullied by Aiden's mother. Mom, what are you doing? Aiden pulled his mother away and held me in his arms while I was crying pitifully. Seeing that Aiden's mother was about to accuse me first, I spoke up before her. Seemingly magnanimous, but actually complaining. Aiden, don't blame Auntie for hitting me. She tried to persuade me to leave you. Which was also for your own good. Don't quarrel with Auntie because of me. I nestled in Aiden's arms, looking like a frightened kitten. Extremely pitiful. Aiden's mother was so angry that she wanted to hit me again. But this time Aiden didn't indulge his mother anymore. Instead, he pushed her away. Aiden's mother looked at her son in disbelief. Aiden, you actually pushed me for this woman? There was disappointment and helplessness in Aiden's eyes. Mom, hadn't I so blind say? I've said it before. I won't break up with Serena. Please stop forcing her. And stop forcing me too. Aiden's mother was so angry that she beat her chest and stamped her feet. She cursed Aiden for being unfilial. Then she resorted to her most skilled trick, pretending to faint. But Aiden just looked at her coldly. Mom, stop pretending. I know you're okay. Go back and don't come to trouble Serena anymore. Aiden's mother grabbed Aiden's clothes, hitting and scolding him. Finally, Aiden fulfilled my obsession. When she had no more strength left, she rushed out of the door. Leaning against Aiden, I showed a faint sneer. In my previous life, Aiden's mother also came to insult me like this. At that time, I was so angry that I cursed back at her. Aiden's mother pretended to be stimulated and fainted. It so happened that Aiden saw it. Aiden blamed me for being disrespectful to his mother and causing her to faint. This was also the beginning of Aiden's dislike for me. But now, for the same thing, the one pretending to be the victim is me. And the one who is disliked and driven away is Aiden's mother. Since Aiden's mother failed to break us up, Kina naturally wasn't willing to give up. She started to use the baby to call Aiden away. Just like in my previous life. The first time, I happened to be with Aiden. Aiden glanced at me and resolutely refused. Seemingly considerate and magnanimous. But actually testing him. I said, Why don't you go and take a look? What if something's wrong? No, no. Let's have our meal. Although Aiden refused harshly. But I could see a trace of reluctance in his eyes. However, I didn't persuade him anymore. If I kept persuading him, it would seem that I didn't love him. Perhaps because Aiden's mother failed to drive me away and Aiden refused to see the baby. Kina became anxious. She actually arranged for Leo to parachute into our department as the vice president in advance. Just like in my previous life. Leo followed Kina's arrangements and approached me intentionally or unintentionally. He tried to make me fall in love with him so as to help Kina break up me and Aiden. And I also found that Aiden started to secretly meet Kina without telling me and was gradually distancing himself from me. Leo's appearance happened to be able to give me a hand. When Leo invited me to have a meal alone to celebrate winning the cooperation project, I readily agreed. I deliberately revealed this news to Aiden. Sure enough, Leo was supporting me, who was pretending to be drunk, and waiting for a car at the entrance of the restaurant. When I saw Aiden's car appear, I immediately leaned on Leo's shoulder and pretended to be very intimate with him. After Aiden got out of the car, he immediately pulled me away and punched Leo. I stood in front of Leo and questioned Aiden, "What are you doing? Why are you hitting people randomly?" Aiden's face changed greatly, and he looked at me in disbelief. "Serena, you actually sided with him?" I didn't answer Aiden's question. After all, my original intention was just to make Aiden jealous. Some words were not convenient to say in front of Leo, so I pretended to be too drunk to stand steadily. Both Leo and Aiden came to support me. But in the end, I still chose to lean on Aiden. Only then did Aiden's angry expressions soften a bit. He said proudly to Leo, "President Leo, you don't need to worry about my girlfriend." Then he picked me up and carried me into the car and took me away. After getting home, Aiden threw the drunk me onto the sofa. He roared furiously, "Serena, how could you have dinner alone with another man and even let him put his arm around you? Don't forget, you're my girlfriend." There was a moment of silence. In the room, the only sound left was my sobbing. Only then did Aiden come to his senses and ran over to look at me. My tears fell one by one. In my tear-filled eyes. It seemed that Aiden's surprised and pained expression was reflected. "Serena, what's wrong with you? I'm feeling awful." "Aiden, you said I'm your girlfriend. But when you secretly went to see Kina, did you really treat me as your girlfriend?" "But I didn't dare to ask you. I was afraid that if I did, you would really leave me." I sobbed uncontrollably. My hand tightly gripped the flesh of my thigh, just to force out a few more tears. I guessed that my thigh must have been bruised by then. But if it could make Aiden feel sorry for me, so be it. Aiden hugged me tightly, stroked my back to comfort me, and was eager to explain to me. "I didn't go to see Kina. I just went to see the child. You know. After all, that's my child. But there's nothing between me and Kina. The person I love the most is still you." I desperately suppressed the nausea welling up in my throat. I reached out and hugged Aiden. "Okay. I believe you." Aiden was overjoyed to receive my forgiveness. He carried me to the bed and was about to pull the quilt over me. But the ringing of the mobile phone interrupted all this. Aiden glanced at me before turning around to answer the phone. It must be a call from Kina. I quickly coughed twice and pretended to feel nauseous. Aiden immediately hung up the phone and turned to look at me. I just felt like vomiting. And my head hurt so much. "I'll go make you some hangover soup." As soon as Aiden left, his mobile phone placed on the bedside table vibrated. Kina's name was flashing on the screen. I didn't hesitate to pick it up. My voice was cold and triumphant. "Stop calling. He won't go." There was immediately no sound on the other end. Kina was furious. Her shouting almost burst my eardrums. "Serena, weren't you so drunk that you lost consciousness?" The corners of my mouth curled slightly. Presumably, Leo had told Kina everything that happened tonight. That's why Kina couldn't sit still and was afraid that Aiden would never pay attention to her again. So she desperately tried to call Aiden away, trying to prove that her thoughts were wrong. But I really wanted to see how crazy this Kina could be. "So, he's busy making hangover soup for me and can't go anywhere. Give up." Ignoring Kina's yelling, I directly hung up the phone. Then I deleted the call records and turned off the phone. Just then, Aiden came in with the hangover soup. I obediently drank it up. Then I kept pretending to want to vomit and made Aiden busy until midnight. He was so tired that he fell asleep directly on the chair. It was not until it was completely dawn that he woke up and picked up his mobile phone to turn it on. I don't know what message he saw, but he took off running. I got up and grabbed him. But Aiden looked impatient. Serena. Something has happened to the child. Something very serious. I accompanied you all night last night. Now I just want to go and see the child. Do you still want to stop me? Are you really so heartless? It was so ridiculous. I hadn't even said anything yet. Aiden started to put the blame on me. There were tears in my eyes and I looked wronged. I just wanted to ask you what happened. How about I go to the hospital with you? With one more person. There will be one more person to help the child. Aiden's furrowed brows relaxed a little. And he nodded. When we arrived at the hospital, Kina was surprised and unwilling when she saw me and Aiden coming together. But she was busy pretending to be pitiful in front of Aiden and had no time to pay attention to me. Aiden. I'm sorry. It's all my fault for not paying attention. That's why the child fell off the bed and bled a lot. What should I do? If something happens to him, I don't want to live either. I gasped. I never expected that in order to keep Aiden by her side, Kina would even be willing to hurt her own child. The child had a head injury and needed to have an operation as soon as possible. Aiden took the form and rushed to pay the fee. As soon as he left, a nurse came out of the operating room. Kina asked anxiously, "Is there something wrong with my child? The O-type blood in the blood bank is in short supply. We need to coordinate." After saying that, the nurse hurried away. But when I looked at the nurses retreating back, I was stunned. Was Aiden and Kina's child an O-type blood? But I remembered that Aiden was an AB-type blood. He shouldn't be able to have a child with O-type blood, right? I looked at Kina, who was sitting on the chair in a daze. In disbelief. Could it be that Kina's child wasn't Aiden's? But when the guess became a fact, I saw on the DNA paternity test report that the child wasn't Aiden's. I was also confused for a moment. If the child wasn't Aiden's, then whose could it be? I had no clue. I could only put away the paternity test report first. These days, Aiden has been busy taking care of the child. He has been spending more and more time with Kina, coupled with the fact that Aiden's mother has always been brainwashing him about how hard it is for Kina to raise the child alone. Aiden's attention has gradually shifted away from me. And after I received the DNA paternity test report, I no longer stopped Aiden from seeing Kina. The deeper Aiden's feelings for his child are now, the more painful he will be when he finds out that the child isn't his in the future. What's more, the more Aiden goes to see the child, the more complacent Kina will be. And I will have the opportunity to make Kina fall from heaven to hell. In my last life, at this time, Kina still didn't know that she wasn't Vincent's biological daughter. Now, she should know. So I anonymously sent Kina to DNA paternity test reports. One was between me and Vincent. The other was between Kina and Vincent. My report proved that Vincent and I were biological father and daughter. Kina's report, however, proved that Vincent wasn't her biological father. As I expected. After Kina saw the paternity test reports, she crumpled the two pieces of paper into a ball and threw them hard against the opposite wall. She let out a crazy roar. Her face twisted in anger. It turned out that the identity of the daughter of the Vincent family, which she was most proud of, never belonged to her. The fact that Kina wasn't Vincent's biological daughter. I also found out in my last life when I learned that Kina had killed my mother. It turned out that after Vincent left my mother, he never found a stable job and even offended someone. It was Wendy's husband who appreciated Vincent. He not only helped him out of trouble but also kept him by his side. But later, Wendy got pregnant and her husband happened to pass away. In order to repay Wendy's husband's kindness, Vincent offered to take care of them, mother and daughter. Over the years, Vincent and Wendy have never told Kina about this in order to give Kina complete family. So after Kina fell in love with Aiden, she thought that as the daughter of the Vincent family, she was of a higher status than me and looked down on me. She also used this identity to make Aiden's mother approve of her. But what if she wasn't the daughter of the Vincent family? Aiden's mother might not continue to help match-make her with Aiden. She might even agree to me, the real daughter of the Vincent family, being with Aiden. She was also worried that I would take away the unique fatherly love that she had received for many years. I guessed that she would definitely do something to me. Just like in my previous life, the night before I represented the company in the architecture competition in my last life. In order to prevent me from showing up, Kina pushed me down the stairs in the company corridor. It was Leo, who had just finished working overtime, who saved me in time. And that's why I didn't die. Leo thus became my savior. But later I found out that this was all planned between him and Kina. It was also to make me trust Leo more and successfully break up me and Aiden. Kina also successfully took my work and replaced me to participate in the competition, and won the gold award of the competition. She even accused me of stealing her design work. On the surface, Vincent said he would find out the truth, but privately, he persuaded me to leave the company voluntarily on the grounds that he didn't want me to be criticized. Unfortunately, heading faithfully. At that time, I didn't realize that Vincent was favoring Kina. I was fooled by him and voluntarily resigned, which instead confirmed my reputation as a thief. So when Kina proposed to represent the company in the competition, I argued my case, but I chose to withdraw when Vincent was in a dilemma. Then, let out a low sorry, I handed in my resignation letter to Vincent. You want to resign? Serena. I know you've been wronged because you weren't allowed to participate in the competition. But there's no need to go as far as resigning. Right? How about this? Whatever you want. Tell Dad. And I'll arrange it for you as compensation. Vincent started to make empty promises again. The reason he wanted to keep me was nothing more than that a major client had specifically requested me to do the design. And he was worried about losing this major client. Unfortunately, after being reborn, I don't like empty promises. What's more, I'm waiting for him to be disgraced. Do I really want to stay and get myself into trouble? I still showed an understanding look. Dad, I don't want to put you in a difficult position. As long as I'm still in the company, there will definitely be similar situations like today. You must be really troubled being caught between us. So I'm willing to take a step back and lead the company. As for the work in my hands, I think President Leo can take it over. Having said that, Vincent didn't know how to refuse. He could only agree to my resignation and arranged the work in my hands for Leo. When Leo heard that I was leaving, he was also surprised. You're leaving? So suddenly? Can't you stay? Just do it for my sake. Meeting Leo's expectant gaze, I almost vomited. He really played his part well. But recently, I have indeed been getting quite close to Leo. Naturally, having fulfilled Mad Sigh. It gave him the illusion that I had real feelings for him. I suppressed the nausea churning in my stomach. I smiled at him with the corners of my lips raised. I'm just leaving the company. Not leaving this city. We can meet any time we want in the future. After all, I still have something that I need Leo's help with. Leo looked delighted after hearing this. As long as you need me, I'll be there at any time. I smiled but didn't say anything. I was about to pick up my things and leave the office. When Leo saw this, he offered to help me carry them. And I didn't refuse. But just as we reached the door, we ran into Aiden. Serena, why didn't you tell me you were leaving the company? Aiden glanced sideways at Leo beside me. When he looked at me again, his eyes were full of dissatisfaction and anger. Even he knows you're leaving the company. But I knew nothing about it. Serena, who is really your boyfriend? I looked at Aiden as he questioned me like a clown. I smiled scornfully and distaffanially. Having come this far, I finally didn't need to coax him anymore. Are you really my boyfriend? When I was socializing with clients and got drunk and had a stomachique, where were you? When I worked overtime for several nights in a row and even got a fever from exhaustion, where were you? Let me tell you. You were with Kina, accompanying your child. The three of you were having a great time as a family. Aiden, how can you still have the nerve to say you're my boyfriend? Aiden's face turned livid. My accusations are undoubtedly pointing the finger at him for cheating. He has always been concerned about his reputation and would absolutely not allow the label of cheating to be placed on himself, which would affect his reputation. You know very well that the child was seriously injured. Anyway, I'm his biological father. Isn't it right for me to take care of him? Do you want me to be an irresponsible person? Besides, if you don't tell me these things, how could I possibly know? I had a cold expression on my face and didn't even want to give Aiden a glance. Yes, Aiden. So now I'm telling you. I don't want to stop you from being a responsible father either. Aiden. We're breaking up. Just because I went to take care of the child. You want to break up with me? I don't understand where Aiden got the confidence to shout at me. Until he pointed at Leo and let out a sneer. I see. It's because of him. Isn't it? You've fallen in love with someone else and are deliberately making up these excuses to break up with me. Leo angrily shook off Aiden's hand. Aiden, you can say whatever you want about me. But don't wrong Serena. But the more Leo spoke up for me, the more he added fuel to the fire. Aiden became even more convinced that I had already betrayed him and was together with Leo. But I'm not someone who can be easily labeled. Aiden, get it straight. It's you who has fallen in love with someone else now. So please don't come to me again in the future. Just the sight of you makes me sick. I picked up my things and left, leaving Aiden completely behind me. I also noticed the triumphant smile that played on Leo's lips. Not long after, I received the wedding invitation from Aiden and Kina. It was sent by Aiden. It was as if he was telling me, without me, he, Aiden, would have better choices. But he didn't know. I had been waiting for this day for a long time. That day, I deliberately broke up with Aiden in front of Leo. It was to let Kina know that we had broken up, so that she could take advantage of the situation and win over Aiden. She was even afraid that things would change if she waited too long. So she put the wedding on the agenda. But just 2 days before the wedding, I anonymously sent Leo the DNA test report of the child. If I hadn't overheard Leo and Kina arguing in the stairwell of the company before, I wouldn't have known that. In fact, a week before Kina had a relationship with Aiden, she had also ended up in bed with Leo because they were drunk. So the child wasn't Aiden's. It was Leo's. This was the wedding gift I gave to Aiden and Kina. Leo knew that the child was his. No matter how selfless he was, he definitely wouldn't allow Kina to marry Aiden with the child. When Aiden found out that the child he had doted on for so long wasn't his expression must have been very interesting. But on the day of the wedding, it wasn't Leo who I was waiting for. It was the police officers. Kina actually killed Leo. It turned out that after Leo received the DNA test report and learned that Kina's child was his, he couldn't sit still immediately. He called Kina to his home and directly revealed the truth, asking her to cancel the wedding and be with him. But Kina had gone to great lengths to get close to Aiden. How could she allow Leo to ruin everything? In order to prevent the child's true identity from being exposed, Kina picked up the knife on the table and pointed it at Leo. She heartlessly stabbed him. After Leo reacted, he tried to take the knife from Kina's hand. When the two of them were struggling over the knife, Kina was scratched by the knife. Her blood happened to drip onto the test report. During the struggle, the test report drifted under the coffee table. And Leo, who was injured, couldn't overpower Kina at all. In the end, he fell in a pool of blood. In a panic, Kina dismembered the body and hid it in the refrigerator. Unexpectedly, the whole community had a power outage all day yesterday. And because the refrigerator was stuffed to full, the door popped open. A neighbor passing by Leo's house smelled a foul odor and then called the police. And that's when Leo's body was discovered. The test report stained with blood also became evidence of Kina's presence at the scene. When Aiden learned that the child wasn't his, he was completely devastated in an instant. He harshly shook off Kina's hand that was holding him. Even when Kina was being taken away, he didn't even look back at her. He didn't even want to glance at her. A wedding that should have been happy and romantic eventually ended in a farce. After Kina was taken away, Vincent and Wendy tried every means to get her out. I in turn recorded Vincent's company. Several projects of the company were obtained through illegal means. And during the projects, it also involved the use of unscrupulous and inferior materials. It was very difficult for me to collect these pieces of evidence when I was in the company. As the person in charge of the company, Vincent was taken away. Aiden was also implicated because he was in charge of 2 of the projects. Vincent took all the blame on himself, so that Wendy could distance herself and help get him out from the outside. But I anonymously sent Wendy a recording. It contained the truth that Vincent had hired someone to cause a car accident and killed Wendy's husband. The driver had fled the scene of the accident for more than 10 years. Recently, because he was short of money, he came back to ask Vincent for money. Coincidentally, when Vincent was making a phone call in the office, I detected something was wrong. I followed Vincent and then discovered this matter. Originally, having fulfilled my obsession, Wendy was with Vincent just to give Kina a complete family. Now that she knew Vincent was the murderer who killed her husband, Wendy certainly wouldn't choose to save Vincent. She even wished that Vincent would die. After all, they had been married for 20 years. She had far more evidence in her hands that could send Vincent to his death than I did. So what Vincent was waiting for wasn't Wendy's rescue, but evidence that would send him to his doom. I once hoped so much that Vincent could stand on my side and support me in seeking justice for my mother. But there were quite a few senior employees in the company who still respected Wendy. In order to get Wendy's support and stabilize his position in the company, he chose to take Kina's side. I was extremely disappointed in his bias. Now, Vincent also got to experience the feeling of going from hope to despair. At this time, he actually remembered that he had a daughter like me and wanted to ask me for help. But he would never be able to find me. When I reported Vincent, I had already decided to leave. After Kina came back, I asked my mother to go on a trip with a familiar neighbor nearby. I was just afraid that Kina would use the same old tricks and target my mother. It was only after Kina was in Prez and that I let my mother come back. Just then, a senior female classmate went to start a business in the South and wanted to invite me to go with her. I agreed and persuaded my mother to leave with me. After sending the recording to Wendy, I took my mother and went to the South. No one knew that I was Vincent's daughter. Everything about him had nothing to do with us. After arriving in the South, my mother no longer ran the noodle shop. Instead, she lived a retired life and danced square dances with other old ladies. Every time I passed by the community square after work, I would stop and take a look at my mother. When I saw her happy and beaming face, I would always feel very content. The retired life that my mother didn't experience in her previous life. Let her enjoy it to the fullest in this life. The end.